Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to Tuesday Cruiser Chat with Otram. Same format as always, nothing new to talk about this week, or nothing planned rather, just whatever questions you guys have, I'll try to answer them. Let's see, shop news. Moving along on the turbo truck that we're doing. The head's off the machine shop. I got the shift kit done in the transmission last week. Before I went out of town, and yeah, just prepping everything else. Went down to Asheville, North Carolina for a long weekend for my anniversary. My wife and I had an awesome time. If you haven't been to Asheville, it is an excellent place to visit. Cool town to walk around, and just tons of really good hiking, like within short driving distance of town. So it was really cool. And now I am back here at work. Yeah, just moving along at the shop. Crash has been out sick this week, so it's been just me trying to get things done. Capital Land Cruiser Club is having Tech Day at the shop this Saturday, I think the 19th. So if any of you guys are semi-local and want to swing by, we'll be having Tech Day on Saturday, kind of open house kind of gig. Capital Land Cruiser Club will be there prepping trucks for fall crawl the following weekend, which will be fun. I'm not sure what I'm driving up to fall crawl yet. It's probably going to be my Subaru, because I don't think I'm going to have the Shady 80 or my 4Runner running well enough to get there. But who knows, maybe I'll have a final push. But yeah, so I'll be at Fall Crawl next weekend, not this one coming, for a little bit, which will be fun. But then I'm leaving early to go do a 10K Saturday afternoon. So hopefully I don't die. I haven't done a 10K yet. And yeah, Steve, it'd be cool if you could make it. Lots of the club dudes turn out, and it's usually a pretty big day. I didn't see a ton of freaky people in Asheville. Of course, I may be one of the freaky people, so I just didn't recognize other freaky people. I'm not sure. But yeah, we really dug it down there. It was really cool. They had quite a few vegan restaurants. And it was just super cool to be able to go in and know you could eat anything off the menu without having to double check. To make sure that it was cool. And it was like super tasty food. I guess it is good morning for you all the way on the other side of the world. It's evening here. But yeah, it was good to get away for a couple days. Got a bunch of hiking in, got a bunch of really cool pictures, and just had a good relaxing time. I really enjoyed it. You know, my wife and I were both like, man, like we could totally retire and move down here. And then we looked up the price of housing, and no, we couldn't retire and move down there. But definitely a cool place to visit. Except I think it took us like 8 or 9 hours to drive home. It was drizzling, and it was just like accidents the entire way back to Virginia. It was crazy. Oh, all you multiple 80 people. Yeah, 80 with a knock gets to be an awesomely expensive fix. 80 with a knock with a spare engine thrown in is always awesome, especially not knowing about the engine. We've done 2 engines lately, like used motors, and both of them were not good. And of course, we didn't realize that. Didn't realize that until after we had installed them. And the fellows went down to Asheville, North Carolina for a long weekend for my anniversary. So got in a bunch of good food and hiking, and it was super awesome. I'd been down in the area when Great Smoky Mountain Trail Ride used to be kind of near there, but I'd never actually been to Asheville. We'd always gone around through the Tennessee side to go to G. Smitter. Oh, and I don't know that this is worth getting up at 6 a.m. for. I'm not sure it's worth getting up at 6 p.m. for. Checking the engine with it not installed. You could do a cylinder leak down test. You'll need an air compressor and a leak down test rig. And basically you roll the crank to top dead center on each cylinder, and pressure, you run air pressure in through the spark plug hole, and it'll give you a percentage of air that's leaking past rings, valves, whatever. That'll give you a fairly good indication of ring sealing or cylinder sealing performance. It won't tell you anything about the bearings though. And other than completely disassembling it and measuring and checking everything, I'm not sure that there is a really good way to check the bearings without actually putting it in and running it. And I'm super excited to go camping, not this weekend, but next weekend. I haven't been camping in forever, so it'll be nice to sleep in a tent for a couple of days at Fall Crawl. Overland Expo East was on our way, on the route we took down to North Carolina, so we saw all the cool expo rigs going both ways, as we were driving down and coming home, which was kind of cool. And saw a couple of them that must have left early in North Carolina while we were there. I don't know anybody in the Jacksonville area. The closest shop I can think of off the top of my head would be ACC up in Georgia. I think they're outside of Atlanta. But I think that's still probably a pretty decent hike from Jacksonville. The hanging up on the rocks is probably the biggest downside to using the drop brackets. That, and I could see where, they could add more flex to the mounts on the frame. But I don't know that I've ever actually seen a set in person, so I don't know that for sure. I would look at using something like the Delta radius arms that have been re-angled to account for the lift over using the drop brackets. Although the drop brackets do keep you in the proper plane. Um, and to Jeff, what might cause new belts to break and get caught in the fan and break the upper radiator hose off on a 97 LX450? My guess would be whoever put the belts on ran them on the wrong side of the idler pulley that's down near the oil pump. I've seen them come in where people have run them to the inside of the idler pulley instead of on the outside where it should be. And I don't even know how they got those belts on there, but they're always like shredded and way overstretched when somebody does that. And I've seen a couple of them break from that. Otherwise, I would guess just poor quality belts. We always use the Toyota ones because they last forever and they seem to be the cheapest. And to Paul, for getting rusty undercarriage bolts out without breaking them, you can try like, out in, slowly wiggling them out. But 100 series just suck for breaking frame bolts. And there's not a good way to prevent it. I don't know what they made the frames out of on 100 series, but it's garbage. And the bolts just break. We usually just suck it up, break them, and then weld nuts onto them and pull them out. And the heat from welding the nut on usually gets them out pretty easy. And awesome, Mina. Glad you're finally able to catch it live. And Steven, you definitely do not want me to wheel your rig. I can't see, and I drive by Braille. I don't know if you've seen my 4Runner down at the shop, but it's the one that looks like a crumpled up tin can. So yeah, you do not want me driving your truck. It's very bad. There's a reason I didn't care about the condition of the body of the 80 series that I bought. Because when I wheel it, it's just going to get destroyed. I'm bad at seeing lines, bad at picking lines, bad at following spotting. I'm just all around not good at driving. Although I did have a guy merge into me today coming home for lunch. So I did do some minor 65 mile an hour four-wheeling in the median coming up 29. So that was exciting. But that was in the Subaru, so it was okay. Yeah, Paul has drank the Land Cruiser Kool-Aid. I really dig his current truck. I really liked his old truck too, and I get to look at it every day because it's sitting in the parking lot at the shop. But yeah, I like his current truck. And to Paul, I'm assuming you're talking about removing the grease fitting after lubing the drive shaft slip joints. I generally only put like 1 or 2 pumps in there to try to avoid hydrolocking them. But I have seen a lot of people way over grease them, and we've had to pull the grease fitting out to let the excess grease out. Because it will mess up the transfer case output bearings if you leave them hydrolocked like that. And yeah, Steven, yours was the truck I was picturing when I was envisioning why brand new belts would break on an LX450. I guess I would be a progressive. I have a Subaru because it was $200 and it was sitting in the shop parking lot when I moved into the shop. But I really like it. Most of the books you can see behind me are my wife's. Mine are more towards the other end of the bookcase. But yeah, I guess we would be progressive. I do have a Subaru, and we are vegan. Da. 93 2.4. You've lost me on that one. Oh, and what'd Paul do to the truck? I haven't heard about him messing it up last week. And the 2.4 turbo motor. You talking about the Cummins? I thought that was a 2.8. Yeah, I'm completely lost on this one. For ignition coils and engine sensors and stuff like that, I would only use Toyota ones. It seems like all the aftermarket stuff is just junk. If you can find actual real Denzos, those would probably be okay. But we usually just use the factory Toyota ones. Oh, yeah, I haven't heard about Paul's truck dying. That sucks. The turbo diesel motor. Oh, your truck. Or actually, I'm getting confused. So to June, on the turbo diesel motor, I am not positive. I've done one oil pan gasket. I think it was a 1HDT. And it sucked. Mostly just because it's glued on and you're hanging upside down and all the crap is dripping on you while you're in there. And I have never done the 2LTE. I've never actually even seen one of those in person. Yeah, I don't know. I'd imagine it's not. Yeah, we never got the turbo diesel trucks here as like mass imports or the 70 series like at all. So there's just a few of them trickling in now that it's past like the 25-year rule. So I've had a couple of 70 series come through, but we haven't really done any major work to them. So I know next to nothing about them. Other than I really want one. It's hard to say without seeing it. If it slowly lost power until it died and then wouldn't turn over, it almost sounds like you had a main bearing seize. But it's hard to say. But that would be my guess. But that's just a guess without seeing it. I know like the 1HD and 1HDT and all those seem reliable. I don't know anything about the 2LTE. I just haven't looked into that much. I don't recommend greasing the drive shaft until you see movement. I've seen in the Toyota manual where it says until you see grease, but I've seen so many of them that people have just pumped them full and grease never came out, and they hydrolocked the shaft. And we've seen a couple of them bad enough that it wore out the output bearing in the rear of the transfer case. So I usually just give them a couple of pumps. Like the guy that used to build our drive shafts, he didn't even recommend using the Zerk fitting to grease the slip joints. He would like pull them apart, hand grease the splines, and put them back together. And for the same reason, he saw so many people over grease the slip joints and hydrolock them. And yeah, I'm planning to shoot a video on rebuilding the locker in my 80. I bought both of the rebuild kits from Wits End and climbed under there, and I have a rear locker, but somebody took the entire front axle assembly that was locked out and replaced it with a non-locked axle. So I don't have a front locker to rebuild, which really sucks because I rebuilt the knuckles and put RCV axles in before I noticed that there wasn't a locker in it. So now I gotta take it all back apart. So yeah, I will be doing a video of the rear one at least. And if we have a truck come in with a front one, I will shoot that as well. You towed it home, charged the battery, and let it idle, and it did the same thing after a few minutes, but no alternator light on the dash. That's hard to say. Because I've never seen an 80 alternator go bad without the alternator light, or the brake and charge lights coming on. But if it will start and idle, that is a good thing. So hopefully it's not bearing seizing up. But yeah, I guess it could be a funky battery. Yeah, that doesn't really make sense either, because I think you'd still see a low charging light on. Oh, it's on 100. On 100, I think I've never seen a alternator fail without the battery light coming on. I guess it's possible. I'm trying to think what else that could be. And there's no check engine light, no codes popping up, anything like that. Because I think if it was alternator but no alternator light on, and it still went low voltage enough to shut off, I think you would see that as a low voltage warning in like the ABS system or something like that. And yeah, that's where I was gonna go next with Mitch. Check the battery terminals, or just put a voltmeter, or also put a voltmeter on it and watch the voltage as the truck's running. You know, and if the voltage starts dropping, and you start getting under like 13 volts, then you're not charging. Trying to think what else would do it. Yeah, I would watch the battery voltage as it's dying, like at the battery. Yeah, that's about all I can think of. It could, I mean, it could be a bad ground. I can't say that I've seen that on a 100 series yet, but it's always a possibility. A clogged cat could do that as well, you know, as you built up back pressure until you finally killed it. But I think you would feel that because there'd be like an engine imbalance side to side, because I'd really doubt you killed both cats at the same time. And I think you'd also see that as a check engine light for cat efficiency codes. Yeah, without seeing it and putting hands on it, I would guess alternator. If it drops below 13, it means you're not charging. Because like the just resting battery voltage on an automotive battery is, you know, upper 12s, and usually they charge like 13 and a half to 14 and a half, somewhere in that area. And to just Jake, any tips on engine removal on an 80 series? Do you have to take the trans out with it? You don't have to take the transmission out with it. We've just found it's a lot easier to take the whole drivetrain out as one. It's easier to pull it all out as one and then split it on the floor. And when you do it that way, you don't have to worry about fishing the wiring harness down through the intake while it's in the truck. You know, you unplug the wiring harness from the back of the ECU, you know, pull it out of the firewall, and then you can take, you know, the whole drivetrain with the wiring harness, with the trans cooler lines, and everything can come out as one set, and you don't have to mess with trying to get the bell housing bolts loose from underneath, or trying to get the bell housing and the engine to mate back together when you put it back in. It looks like a lot more work to pull the whole transmission with it, but it actually ends up being easier. We did it once that way because we were doing multiple parts, and we're like, we're gonna have the whole drivetrain out anyway, we might as well pull it. And since we did that, we've just done it that way each time, because it's a lot easier. I have never changed the VVTi cam seals in the newer 4.7s. Luckily, I haven't seen one seeping yet. It's a lot more work than just doing the timing belt, because the cams have to come out to do it, at least as far as I understand from looking through the manual. It seems like everything has to come apart and does not look like a fun job. But I haven't done it yet, so I don't know for sure. ARB bumper is super easy to take off. Just pull the bumper, pull the cross member, pull the radiator, and pull it out the front. It's way easier. Even when we were still using a cherry picker, it was easier. Now with the gantry crane at the shop, it's super easy. But yeah, half the time I pull ARB front bumpers off just when I'm doing oil pump cover seals, just because I don't like leaning that far over them. I've got short arms, so the closer I can get to the engine, the better. Yeah, anything you can get out of the way makes that job easier. No, do not reuse races when you're replacing roller bearings. The race and the new bearing get like lapped in together. They're a matched set. Um, so you've gotta like if you put a new bearing in an old race, you will destroy the new bearing in short order. It's we usually just let the air out of the front tires to get it down enough. Um, it makes it much easier to go down. Um, and if you've already got the trans out and you have to pull the engine out also, I would mate them together like on the floor and put the whole wiring harness and everything together and then drop it back in as a unit. Um, it makes it so much easier. You'll probably want to have a couple friends come over just to help guide, because that much weight swinging around is not fun on a cherry picker. With the gantry crane, Crash does them by himself. But the cherry picker, it's easier with a couple of people. Cool. Yeah, good luck with figuring that one out, and holler if you have any questions. Especially if you're local. Swing by. We're usually there during the day. Um, 35s in stock 410s. Planning on running 37s. Um, I would go. I would go 488s, maybe 529s. Like 529s would put you back stockish, but you're getting really small in the pinion head when you get down to 529. 488s will keep you a little bit stronger, but won't get you quite the low end torque. And to Jamie, the plug for the harness, the trans harness plugs in under the intake manifold where the bell housing comes together. There's two big plugs. And then there's also that harness that loops over the trans that goes to the shift selector and a temp switch and the two oxygen sensors. But if you're pulling the engine out, undo the harness that goes along the firewall, and it goes through. If you open the glove box, you can just unplug that from the ECU and leave the whole harness attached to the engine when you pull it, and then you can just remate everything as it goes back together. Otherwise, you have to split the intake manifold to fish the harness back through it because of the way it's routed. Yeah, I got by with only a cherry picker for a long time. We just got the gantry crane maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And, Crash was like, I'm going home and throwing my cherry picker away. If I have to pull an engine, I'm just going to tow whatever it is here to the shop and use the gantry crane. And since then, we've just used the cherry picker to pick stuff up and move it around. Yeah, to get the harness out of the intake, you've got to split the upper and lower. Um, but if you pull it out of the dash, you can leave it hooked to the end, like everything with the engine as you pull it, and then do everything outside of the truck, where it's much easier to get at everything. Like, it's so much easier to put the intake and everything back on, on a head, on an engine stand, than it is, like, trying to fish everything up through from underneath. Just a minute. You guys want to go outside? Going out? I think the dogs are ready for their dinner, but we'll go ahead and put them outside and see if that'll calm them down for a little bit. Any way to check a transmission to see if it's good without it being in the truck? There might be. I unfortunately don't know what it would be. Like a transmission rebuilder, I think some of them have like dynos they run them on, so they could test them that way. As far as like in the home shop, or even like a regular auto repair shop, I don't know. Beyond just seeing what the fluid looks and smells like, I don't know that there is a good way. And to Dave, Trilly's doing good after surgery. The cysts she had ended up being way bigger than they thought, so she got a ton of stitches. But she's been doing well. Got most of the stitches out Monday. I think she's got 2 or 3 left that they said to leave in for a couple more days, so she gets the rest of them out Saturday. But yeah, she's doing well. Much better than I would have after surgery. Didn't even really seem to bother her. She was like playing and romping around and everything, like the day after she got back. And she's super happy that she doesn't have to go out on a leash anymore. They're both used to just, going out in the backyard and running. And she was not happy about having to go out on a leash for like 2 weeks. Yeah, like, if you know your trans was good, I would probably stick with it rather than swapping to an unknown. Because, yeah, I really don't know of a good way that you could test an auto with it, out of the truck. Yeah, we got it was a very expensive vet trip when she went in for surgery and Atticus went in for X-rays. It was really expensive, but it turned out good because neither of them were cancer. Uh, it was just a cyst on Trilly that got surgery, and then Atticus, he's got like a growth on a tendon, but they don't want to do anything with it. They're just going to leave it be. So all is well. Yeah, I'd probably stick with the transmission, And there's a saying about that. It's like stick with the evil you know, or something like that. The sensors on the transfer case. There are 3 of them, I think. 2 on the back, kind of above the drive shaft, and then 1 up front that's right in front of the center diff lock actuator. The one on the front, if I'm remembering this correctly, is the diff lock actuator switch. The 2 rear ones, one is neutral and one is low range, I believe, but I never can remember which one is which. But if you go... I'm trying to think... Yeah, there's the quote I'm looking for. Better the devil you know. If you go on, like, a lot of the Toyota parts lookup sites, they'll have, like, a blown up schematic, with, like, numbered parts. And you should be able to figure out which one it is that way. Otherwise, your local Toyota dealer should be able to pull up a schematic and you can, like, point at the one that's broken. But every time I need to figure it out, I either have to look at the wiring diagram and compare wire colors, or I have to fiddle with the shifters and see which one moves which sensor. I'm not sure that's where he was going with that quote, but that's kind of funny. Favorite gear oil for an FJ62, FJ60? Yeah, we usually just use 80/90. We usually just use house brand. We go through a lot, so we buy the 5-gallon buckets because it's cheaper than buying the quarts. Unless you're doing like a ton of highway, I really don't see the need for synthetic. And the front diff on a 60-62, it's not spinning on the highway anyway, only when you've got 4-wheel drive, so conventional's fine. Any decent name brandish 80/90, like locally the house brand stuff is it's all Valvoline, just rebranded. So that's what we use. But yeah, I don't have a super preference. We do work on Forerunners and GXs and all that jazz. We don't do a ton, just because everybody always thinks of us as Land Cruisers. So like 99% of what we do is cruiser. But we've got some customers that have both and bring us their Forerunners and their GXs as well. Crash and I are both originally Forerunner people. So yeah, we started out in Forerunners. I had an FJ60 very briefly, like 10 years ago, and then just bought an 80 series. So I haven't even really ever owned many Land Cruisers, but I've still got my Forerunner. But yeah, long-winded story. But yes, we do work on Forerunners and GXs, just not nearly as many. A lot of it, once you're used to working on Toyota, you get in the mindset of how they did it, and it's pretty similar. Yeah, the 80 series is much easier to work on than the newer stuff. Although I really like the look of a 5th gen. I've had 1st gen and 2nd gen, and Crash has had 1st and 3rd. And my brother had a 4th for a while. But yeah, they're not totally different. The Forerunner timing belt in the 4.7 at least is way easier than the 100 series. There's a way more room in the Forerunner for some reason. That we don't have time to flip them. Although it would be a nice side gig that we've kicked around, like, oh yeah, if we get slow, we'll totally start flipping trucks, and then we can't keep up with the workload that's coming in, so we never get a chance to. Um, 100 series is stalling sometimes when I accelerate. Um, Without knowing codes, I don't know. But generally, if it's going to stall, it's going to set a check engine code. And that would be your best bet for tracking down issues. Like, that'll give you a good starting place. Anything else is going to be just guessing. And yeah, being swamped is a good problem to have. I just need to find another tech so we can be slightly less swamped. Wish I could pick up a good FJ80 for $600. I paid more than that for my complete pile. Yeah, even just losing power, you're gonna need engine codes to have any kind of guess. Otherwise, you're gonna have to get a scan tool that does graphing data and, watch like your fuel trims and your math and TPS and see what's not jiving. 'Cause yeah, it's always just a guessing game without it. And no luck on adding a mechanic yet, although we did have an intern start last week that we've got one afternoon a week, seeing if he actually wants to become a mechanic or not. So that may turn into something, but not sure. No, I didn't go to Toyota University. Actually, didn't go to school at all for being a mechanic. Started going to school for mechanical engineering, which then switched to drafting, which then switched to welding. Meanwhile, was a apprentice in a body shop. Decided I dug doing body work. Stopped going to school. And did collision and restoration for a decade. And just did mechanic work on the side. And then about 10 years ago decided I wanted to be a mechanic. So I became a mechanic. And just did like online classes to get better at engine control theory and stuff like that. And read lots of books. But yeah, no actual mechanic training for me. Other than just learning by failing. Pretty much the same story for Crash. He's just always worked on his own stuff. And got really good at it. So yeah, not the typical way of becoming a mechanic, but it's worked for me. Yeah, wrenching can be stressful. Luckily, I've gotten pretty good at knowing when I'm starting to get frustrated working on something, and I'll like walk away from that and go work on another truck for a while. And usually while I'm working on something else, the solution to the first truck will come to me. So I'll go back to it. So it's nice, having several bays for each of us at the shop so we can bounce between problem child trucks. I can't imagine flipping houses. We've done a ton of renovation work here. And while it's fun, it is not something that I want to do for a living. So 2001 timing belt. Belt was done in 08, 78,000 miles later. What's the urgency level of replacing? So it's either 90 or 95,000 miles or 5 years, whichever comes first. So you're about double the 5-year span. That said, I've seen the belts go a lot longer than that. But it's not a gamble I would want to take. So I would go ahead and replace it just for the peace of mind. On the 4.7, we see the water pumps leaking generally before we see the belts actually getting crunchy. Especially the newer ones that use the pink coolant. If it's got the pink coolant in it, the water pumps usually fail faster than the older red coolant. Yeah, so I would do the timing belt sooner than later, just for the peace of mind. Yeah, I hear you on the only one that's not running right now. Back before I was married, both my roommate and I had multiple hoopty trucks. And it's like you would drive one until it broke down, and then you'd decide which one was the cheapest / easiest to get running again to get you to work. We always had to work through that way. Uh, and yeah, Dave, I think you guys up in Canada have much more strict procedures for mechanics than we do down here in the States. Um, it's crazy. Like, my wife and I were talking about it the other day. You know, she's a therapist, and like all the schooling and testing she's got to go through to be a therapist, or even like, you know, like a barber has to get licensed. But I can just decide one day that I'm a mechanic and work on your 4,000-pound vehicle that's moving at 70 miles an hour down the highway. That's just kind of crazy to me that there's no licensing required for mechanics here. Like, you don't have to prove you know anything. You just put a sign on the door that says mechanic and you're a mechanic. Yeah, I think the Canada system where you actually have to go to school and become licensed would be better for the most part. Like, you know, I went and got all my ASE certifications, but, you know, nobody checks them, and you don't have to have any practical experience even to pass the ASEs. You just have to know how to take the test. So yeah, small rant on licensing of mechanics. And thanks for tuning in, Jamie. We'll catch you later. Yeah, I've seen trucks that came out of Malaysia. Yeah. There should be some licensing, some testing, some kind of follow-up on people that are working on things, you know, traveling at high rates of speed with other things traveling at high rates of speed. Not that I'm a super fan of having to go take tests and pass things, but I think the trade would be better for it. You know, it would weed out a lot of the people that shouldn't be working on vehicles and that just don't care. Being a body tech, would I do a repaint myself in a garage, or would you pay to have it done? I see no problem in, you know, painting your own vehicle in a garage. You know, as long as you can keep dust to a minimum and or are fine with buffing the dust nibs out, or don't care. I've painted, you know, several trucks in garages. There used to be a local guy that did paint and body work, and he didn't have a paint booth. He just, you know, wet down the floor in his shop when it was time to paint. And, you know, his paint jobs came out great. I'm still torn between whether I'm going to paint my 80 or just plasti dip it. But, you know, either way I go, I'll be shooting it at the shop. I'll just hang, you know, plastic sheeting up to contain the mess. Because I've still got, you know, all of my body tools and all my paint guns, and everything. So it wouldn't be a huge deal for me to, you know, shoot a truck. It's just a matter of getting the time to do it. I would not Raptor the outside of a truck. If you plan to keep the truck and never ever sell it, then you're probably okay. Raptoring and, you know, the other truck bed coatings, once you've done it, you can't really unring that bell. You know, it's not like paint where you can scuff it and reshoot it a different color. Like, it is a serious amount of work to get Raptor back off. Although I did the color match Raptor in the bed of my mom's FJ45 years ago, and it still looks great. And it does work nice because it's textured and it's thick. You can hide a lot of sins with it. Your body work doesn't have to be great. You know, you don't have to worry about sand scratches. You know, it will hide a lot of bad body work. But if you ever plan to resell it, that could be a killer on the resale. You know, for a beater wheeling truck, I don't have a problem with it. If it's something you'd ever consider turning into a nice truck down the road, Raptor's going to be real hard to get off. I'm kind of leaning towards plasti dipping my truck just because I hate the color and I don't feel like doing the body work to do it nice. So I'm just going to hammer some like blue plasti dip onto it. You know, and if it gets down the road and I decide that I actually want to paint it and do it well, I can peel the plasti dip back off and go that route. For a couple of years, I worked at a shop that did rhino lining, and we sprayed a couple of trucks, like the full exterior, full interior, everything in rhino, and those trucks weighed so much afterwards. It was crazy. Like, you could tell a weight difference just from having that much bed liner on it. And the Raptor's a lot lighter weight than Rhino, but yeah, there's a lot of downsides to bed linering. And yes, Steven, I absolutely hate the color of my Lexus. Worst color, in my opinion. Yeah, I hate that color. Awesome, Nat. Glad you could tune in. I haven't seen you in forever and a day. You should come down for Fall Crawl in 2 weeks. Because I'm actually probably going to go, even though I won't have a Land Cruiser there because mine's a pile of junk. Raptor done properly, I don't think will hold moisture. Undercoat can, like the tarry, don't really harden kind of ones. But Raptor, if it's prepped properly, you know, it's a urethane based I'm going brain dead. It's a urethane based liner. It's a 2-part. So as long as, you know, it's clean and prepped and the surface is scuffed and everything's all good, it should adhere and not trap moisture. You know, the same as actual paint. But yeah, but if you're painting over like patched body work, you know, you could have moisture bleed through rust, like rust zone or weld zones, stuff like that. So whenever I weld body panels in, I always skim them in fiberglass filler to seal any pinholes in the welds from moisture so that it doesn't track back through and get behind the paint. And what color would I go with? I was going to paint mine orange, just because I paint everything orange. My 4Runner's orange, my house is orange. It's a running joke that I paint everything orange. But I'm probably going to do blue. Yeah. Yeah, probably blue. Like a nice royal blue. With black accents, I think. I would be careful with Raptor in like Arizona sun. I don't know how long that's going to last, like UV stable wise. You might want to put like a UV stabilized top coat over that. And brown copper would look awesome on an 80. I had an 81 Celica that was the old Toyota brown color. And, I really liked that color. I really liked that Celica. That was one of the most fun cars I've ever had. And I just realized that we have slipped past the 7 o'clock hour. So I'm going to jump off of here and start dinner and get the dogs fed so that they quit staring at me. But yeah, thanks to everybody that tuned in. And if you haven't, subscribe below. If you really dig what we're doing on the channel, even though I've been slacking on making videos lately, and with chat, check out our Patreon link down in the description. I always dig the support. And Saturday, October 19th, which is this Saturday, Capital Land Cruiser Club is having Tech Day at the shop. So if you're local to northern-ish Virginia, you're welcome to swing by and hang out. We're kind of having an open house day. Open house day, Tech Day. So I'll be at the shop all day on Saturday when I'm normally not there on Saturdays. So yeah, thanks to everybody that tuned in. And Nat, remind me. So hopefully I will have a truck wheelable soon. So yeah, we'll have to get together and wheel. Because I haven't seen you since we moved back from Boston. Because I've been not to any of the events that you've been at. But yeah, I will catch you guys next week. Sorry about missing last week. I had anniversary stuff to get done before we left. But yeah, anyway, I'm signing off. That's a lot of rambling. I will catch you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in.